Hi, I'm Alex at TotalHeadturners, and today I've got something I'm quite excited and very special to show you. We've managed to get a replica of the AC Ace, the Rodspeed Ace, the 289 Cobra, the 289 Racer style modified, the 289 FIA, all the way up to the 427 Cobra. I'm going to spend a few minutes today showing you the differences so you can see the evolution from start to finish of how these beautiful cars evolved. The first car I'm going to talk about is the AC Ace. The original AC Ace was designed and built by AC, a purely British designed car, built I believe from around 1953, probably up to around about 63. They were a lightweight British sports car. They raced at Le Mans, they won class honours and were very known, good handling and well balanced cars. This is a Hawk Ace. These are very rare as a replica. There are probably only 50 odd plus cars ever built, and it's very rare to have one here today to be able to show you. Something I want to point out on the Ace that is a very good big giveaway is this moustache front end. You'll see that the Ace has this very moustache style nose with the round grille, very smooth arches, no flares or wide arches on it, and the design of this car was to be a lightweight, good handling British sports car. The chassis from the original AC Aces was a tubular design, which is the evolution of the Cobra chassis. I believe that the first V8 cars were Aces with V8s thrown in them and used for racing. Hawk, who made this car, their chassis is a tubular chassis, copied from the original designs, upgraded with slightly more modern MG brakes and axles, lots of different engine variants. This particular one's got a Daimler V8 in it, and it's a great fun, really light and balanced car, really quick and fun through the lanes, great fun to drive. As the Ace evolved, a guy came along, worked with AC, I think who believe originally bought an AC Ace that he raced, called Ken Rudd. And Ken started up a company called Rodspeed, and Rodspeed were the first guys to develop the Ace and put the first Ford engine into an Ace. We turned then to what was known as the Rodspeed Ace. This is a replica, also built by Hawk. The Rodspeed Ace is where you'll see the real evolution towards the Cobra. The most important thing on the Rodspeed Ace, not only was it the first car with a Ford engine, had a Ford Zephyr straight six in it, but you'll also see that the front end was redesigned to give you what is much more classically known and recognised as the Cobra front end. The moustache has gone, the oval mouth has appeared, and other than the actual arches, which are still Ace and still nice and smooth and not flared, still very British and classic looking, you ended up with an Ace Rodspeed. This Hawk Ace is a really beautifully balanced car. The Ace using the straight six engine with a nice rigid chassis, gives you a much nicer balance and lighter feel than a Cobra. But being someone who's used to driving big V8 Cobras all the time, it almost is a little bit of a different way of driving when you drive the Ace style cars with the straight six engine. You realise you use the revs, and the balance and the lightness and the handling of cars is very different. The straight six engine produces a really beautiful note and noise. You know, you really can rev the engine. Lovely little pop on the overrun. And a very light and balanced car, very light to steer. You can really drift the car around. Braking's excellent. You've got MG brakes and MG differential in a very lightweight body. Around about 37 original cars were built, and I hear from Jerry Hawkridge that only around 6 Ace Rodspeed replica bodies have been made. So not only rare as an original, but even rarer as a replica. And this beautiful car's been owned by me before. I've personally done a good few 100 miles plus in this car, and it's a great handling, really fun sports car. Very enjoyable to drive, very easy to drive. This particular one's got a 4-speed with an overdrive. I've done quite a few long motorway journeys in this car, and she'll sit at 60, 70 in overdrive, low revs, really good fuel economy, but fun and fast when you want it to be. Beautiful noise. This particular one has used a Triumph straight 6 engine. Very similar sort of power and design and weight to the Ford engines, but really gives you that Cobra style looks, but not quite yet. And it will show you the evolution of how the front end came around. And if you walk around and study this car, you'll see how close it is to that original 289 Cobra and 260 Cobras, which I'll show you next. Now we're into a V8 and a Cobra. The V8 immediately makes a massive difference in torque and power. You can feel it immediately as soon as you put your foot down at all. You've got that low down grunt and power there. You've still got a lovely balance and lightweight. The V8 in this car is a Rover V8. The Rover produces massive amounts of torque. They don't sound as high on the horsepower figures, but you make up for it in lightness, weight and balance. And of course you got that V8 noise. Sound immediately, you notice the sound difference. The V8, the 8 cylinders make a specific noise that you can't get from a 6-cylinder or a 4-cylinder or even a 12-cylinder. So the AC Aces were 100% British designed and manufactured cars. This is where we come along to the Cobra Shelby story and the real creation of the Cobra. You could see from the Ace going over to a Cobra that the car basically was being modified for Cobra Shelby brokered a deal to supply American V8 engines to put into a British great balance and handling sports car and give it the extra punch and power that it needed by the American engines, which could produce a lot more torque and a lot more power than the straight 6 British engines they were using before. This is where you feel the combination of the V8 in a light British sports car with a bit of increased width of tyre and handling gives you a lovely balanced and powered car. An awesome power. This particular car is a Hawk 289 Cobra. You'll hear of a Mark 1 and a Mark 2 Cobra, both very similar looking cars. Just slightly different engines and very slight modifications as they went along. You'll see the difference. You've got the same nose and front end look as the Rodspeed Ace, but what you'll start to notice is the arches become nicely flared out. This allowed the increase of a slightly bigger chassis, the increase of the bigger engine, to put bigger wheels to allow you to get that more power down on the road, but still with that British superb handling and balanced car. The rear end particularly, we needed the rear arches for bigger wheels, bigger tyres, allowing the use of all that power to keep it on the road. The chassis on the Hawk's lovely and rigid. MG running gear. More than man enough for this sort of power output. Plenty of go. You will notice very slight variations in lots of the original 289 Cobras. Lots of people didn't realise all the cars were built and manufactured at AC with the original AC Cobras. Many of them shipped to the States fully built or some without engines. A lot of the cars would be damaged in transit, would be modified immediately for different motorsport and racing. Hence why if you ever walk along the pits at Goodwood, you'll see every single Cobra is a very slightly different shape here and there. But the basics of it were this wider arched, beautiful Ace looking shape with American V8 engine. So as the AC Cobra, Shelby Cobra evolved, it began to do brilliant in motorsport, began to be this beautiful looking car that people loved on the road, like Steve McQueen would drive one. But mainly this is where most of the modifications began. As the cars started to race, they obviously wanted to put more power into the engines, which meant modifying the car. You'll see on the front of the car, things like oil cooler vents would be added. For racing, they would add things like lifter jacks, allowing them to lift the cars in the pits to change the wheels and tyres. They started to actually change the shapes of the arches. They began widening them. You can see it very noticeable on the rear of this car, being much wider than the standard 289. This was to allow much stronger wheels. The wheels on this car were able to take a lot more pounding and power. Chrome wire wheels looked great and were good, but when you got to certain horsepower, spokes would be known to break. And these sort of type of FIA and racing wheels and the Halliburton wheels would allow the cars to run that lot more power. Roll bars would be added for driver safety. Bonnet vents would be added to allow more air into the engines. And these cars started to add all the race liveries and really give that racing look that you'll see in these famous videos and photos of these Cobras racing. And this is more along the lines of how you'll see Cobras that still race today will look a lot more like this than the standard road cars. This particular Cobra replica is also by Hawk. Great fun car, beautiful lightweight engine, much more in the racer style. And this brings us into the cars that were really made for racing that you'll also see racing the most. And that's what's known as the 289 FIA bodied cars. You'll start to see quite a few differences. So oil cooler scoops are actually built into the bodywork. The arches start to become actually part of the bodywork and more rounded rather than a square slab-sided arch bolted on or on the body. As you go down the side of the car, you'll see the doors were a slightly different shape, more of an S shape, and you'll start to see these wide hips. Most of these cars originally were a few factory built, and lots of them built, I think, in different places and modified to be like this, which is why, again, you'll see lots of these cars, very different sizes and shapes. The wider hips allowed even bigger wheels. You'll notice something different. This particular Cobra's wearing its hard top. Now, most people think the hard top is there to keep you dry. The hard tops on Cobras was actually first put on there to give you a higher top speed. Cobras noticed that getting to a certain speed, around I think 150 mile an hour, they weren't very aerodynamic and struggled to get any faster. By tilting the windscreen backwards and fitting a hard top, it allowed the cars to have a better airflow, and mainly I think were designed to run the cars at Le Mans on the longer tracks where they needed that higher top speed. In fitting the hard top, they had to make a few modifications to the car. Lots of people have heard of the suitcase story where the extra square bit was added to the boot. A lot of people didn't realise that when you put the hard top on, because it was one piece, they actually had to modify the boot to still allow access for the spare wheel. If you compare it to a normal Cobra, you'd see that the boot is one piece and opens in this direction. But by cutting the boot, changing the hinges, allowed you to still access the car with the hard top on without having to unbolt it and take it off to get access to the boot. So here we are in the 289 FIA bodied Cobra. You can see we've got the Le Mans roof on, which will accentuate a lot of the noises you get from the car. Ooh. Immediately I can feel this engine's got plenty of good power in her. This is also by Hawk. This is a Rover V8, but a tuned 3.5 litre. Which has got more than enough go in it. Now we come on to the poster car, the one that everybody had on their wall as a kid, the one that you see in the movies, the one that you see in the rap videos, which is the big 427 Cobras. To get more power and get more performance and to try and get down the straights faster, Shelby managed to get a deal to get the 427 engines, 390 FEs and 428 engines from Ford, which they used to build what become known as the 427 Cobra. This particular one is a Crendon, but what you'll start to see is the difference in the much wider hip shape. This allowed even bigger wheels, even more balloon tyres to get more power down on the road. The semi-competition models had a little lip on the arch. A lot of the road cars were more of a smoother arch. The door became more of that rounded, easier to get in and out of shape. You'll start to see things like the side pipes were added for racing, allowing the cars to be lowered down as low as possible. Rather than running underneath the car, by running down the side, you could get the car lower and get that better handling to the ground. Bonnet scoops became more popular on the semi-competition cars, flatter bonnets on the road cars, a much smoother and wider front arches, almost like mud flaps here down the sides, allowing bigger wheels again to take that bigger power and increase in chassis size. This is the car that was the one that Shelby sold the most, did the best marketing thing in the world. Everybody believed Shelby had built this huge 427 Cobra, still manufactured in the UK and mainly all built there until Shelby went on to do the Ford race team for Ford GT40s. So hopefully today we've shown you a good evolution from the Ace, British AC Ace, all the way up to the Shelby American Cobra, giving you a better insight into all the very differences and different looks and shapes and designs of the Cobra. Here at Head Turners, we've always got a huge selection of cars, Cobras, sometimes Aces, sometimes 289s, GT40s, and if you're looking for something amazing like this, come to our website, pick up the telephone, call us at Head Turners. We'd love to get you down the road in one of these amazing cars.